We're just waiting. I'm waiting for, we're good to go. Yeah, we live stream our meetings now, so we just needed to get that set up to go. So we'll open the meeting. So I will once again read the Aboriginal acknowledgement. The City of Nelson acknowledges all Aboriginal peoples on whose traditional territories we stand. We honor their connection to the land and rivers and respect the importance of the environment to our strength as a community. Could I have someone adopt the agenda, please? Thank you, Councillor Daly, seconded by Councillor Warmington. All in favor? Opposed? The motion carries. Adoption of the minutes of previous meetings from December 4th and December 8th and December 18th. Could I have a motion to approve? Thank you, Councillor Daly, seconded by Councillor Sherbo. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. We now have a request. So we have a request for a development variance permit for 174 Trevor. And this...
I have a conflict of interest, I have to.
So Councillor Adams is recusing himself from the meeting because I believe that you live in that neighborhood. And so we will call you back, Councillor Adams, when we're complete. Backyard. So we have an application for someone that may construct a laneway house on their existing property, and would like to have a variance to proceed with that. The council, you've seen the staff report on this, and there is a recommendation. And Mr. Toom, are you here for this one? Or are you here
Yes,
for
I
that?
am. Mm-hmm.
All right. So, Mr. Toom, would you like to council? Would you like to hear from Mr. Toom first, or would you like the motion on the table? What's your pleasure?
Put the motion on the table.
All right, so we have the application for a development variance permit to vary the requirements of zoning bylaw 3199/2013 to allow for the construction of a detached secondary dwelling unit on the subject property be approved for parcel A, lot 4, block 23, district lot 96, Kootenay District Plan 284, 174 Trevor Street as follows. Zoning bylaw number 3199/2013, section 1.1.9b, to vary the maximum gross floor area from 65 square meters to 93 square meters as per attached plans. And moving on to section 1.1.9c, to vary the maximum gross floor area from 55 meters squared to 62 meters squared as per attached plans. And thirdly, Section 4.1.8 to vary the maximum building height from 5 meters to 5.9 meters as per attached plans. So before we get into discussion, I'm just going to ask Mr. Toom to give us any detail he would like on this proposal.
Absolutely. So the proposal is to construct a two-story laneway house on the rear of this property. Two of the variances then, so in terms of maximum gross floor area and building footprint, looking at the size of it, the lot is exceptionally large, and currently there is a single-family home that's on the property. There isn't a secondary suite in that home, and even with the proposed laneway house, the lot coverage is at 8.4%, which is well below the maximum lot coverage for this lot at 35%. The request to have a larger laneway house and a more gross floor area is in order to use this land more efficiently, so to say, in order to make use of this land in order to provide housing of a suitable size for a family, which the applicant deemed difficult to do with the current regulatory maximum of 700 square feet. In terms of the height, going from 5 meters to 5.9 meters, there's the one property that immediately to the south of the subject property that for whom the laneway house would be visible. We do believe from our analysis that it is below their sight line of the North Shore Mountains and of the lake. So would the laneway house be visible? For sure. But below their sight line, and there's already an existing quite large cedar tree that stands between that existing house, the neighbor's house, and the proposed laneway house, which already obscures much of the view and goes much higher than 5.9 meters. It is also, and also given the slope as well too. There's quite a bit of a slope between the subject property where the laneway house would be sitting and the neighbor's house, which is why it's below their sight line. But it's also important to point out as well too that given the size of this lot, that it is subdividable. There was a request from previous property owners of 174 Trevor in 2014 to subdivide it, and it could also go through a bare land stratification. In which case, on the exact same site of the proposed laneway house, the property owners could build a primary home as large as 10 meters high. So that's, I think, important to keep in mind as well too, that the proposed 5.9 meters is significantly lower than what they could build as of right without going to council for a variance if they chose to subdivide it or stratify it.
Thanks, Mr.
Yes.
Toom. So before we go into debate, there are further questions of staff. Go ahead, Councillor Daly.
Yeah, I'm curious, when a laneway house goes in, I understand that the water and sewer services are hooked up to the primary residence. And so it's still only one sewer charge, except it would be a secondary suite charge.
Exactly, it's the same.
So is that what's happening in this case? Is that, because it looked a long way away from the primary house?
Yeah, and those construction costs, that's up to the property owner.
But they would be required to do it that way as opposed to having their own service come in where if you zoned, if you, subdivided,
Yeah.
you would have to be on your own set of services.
Yeah, exactly. So it's
That's the advantage of a tiny or a back laneway house is you save on the service charges for.
yeah. So that will be up to the property owners then to pay for the construction to extend it from their current service access. So they'll be required to pay the water and sewer connection fee to the city, but then the construction costs on their own property. So it's the same as whether the laneway house was right up next to their home or whether it was even a secondary suite in the basement.
They're going to tie in.
Yes,
And
exactly.
they don't have an option to do the other way?
Not to my knowledge. In some circumstances, perhaps they could, but I don't believe that's the case in this case. Public Works has been notified of the variance request as well too, so it's on their.
Thank you. Any other
Radar.
questions? Open the floor for debate. Any?
We actually, I didn't get a seconder to the motion.
Oh,
I was gonna say, you don't have a seconder, I'll second the motion.
thank you, Councillor. I apologize for the oversight. Any further debate or discussion on this? Are you ready for the question? Oh, go ahead, Councillor Daly.
Well, I given that the size of the property, I went by there today, it's hard to see exactly, a lot of snow there right now. But I get that with a house that big, that you're gonna, it's not gonna have a big impact, that height thing. And you answered my question about the view. I think one of the neighbors was concerned about the view being impeded. You're saying that's not the case. So I understand these added asks. And it does make sense for given the size of the lot. So thank you for answering those
Councillor
questions.
Morrison?
I just have one question that's just pertaining to that. I'm familiar with this lot. I didn't have to recuse myself, but I live in the neighborhood. It's a big lot, so this I think will actually look quite nice in the lot. I am a bit concerned about a letter that we got from one of the people that live in the area regarding when these notices were sent out and whether or not people have had the opportunity. And I'm kind of curious as to when they were sent out, given the fact that we've just gone through Christmas that had, significant amounts of statutory holidays that wouldn't have had mail delivery associated with them.
Yeah. So the neighbor notice was sent out on December 22nd. So in fact, so quite a bit prior to council meeting than we would regularly do. Provincial law requires that it's a 10-day neighbor notice. So it was sent out quite a bit before, and because of the 10 days, the requested date, the deadline for submissions was on January 2nd. And we did start to hear over the course of the past week that many of those notices only started coming in last week. We did still hear from, and as you've seen, we've gotten letters from three individuals. There was another phone request just asking what was going on, but they didn't choose to provide a written comment. In terms of what happened with the mail, I am Canada Post. We can't quite say what happened. I don't know, Francis, if you wanted to add anything.
No, just that it's our requirement to issue them according to the statute, and we know that we did issue them. we can't control what happens with Canada Post and that sort of thing. And so once it leaves here, as long as we've met that statutory requirement, we don't have a duty to ensure that it actually gets to every household, although we do know that it did arrive there to everybody.
Thank you. Counselor Sherbo.
Yeah, in one of the letters we received, they asked, how will the new structure impact the current driveway and bank that was put in by the original owner? Will the bank be destructed, and how might that affect the foliage? Any information on that?
Not too much on that question. I did reply to this individual on Friday with answers to most of those questions. To my knowledge, it should not. In terms of the bank, in terms of foliage and root systems, I'm certainly not the expert to speak on that. Other than to only add that the property owners can build a laneway house as of right, and it's similar issues to whether they were building a single family home or any other kind of structure, a garage or a carport on their property, right?
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Any further questions? Are you ready for the question then? All in favor? Opposed? The motion carries. Thanks, Council. All right, our next item is short-term rental license exemption request. So,
My turn to leave.
and could you send Councilor
Yeah, and I'll
Adams
send the
back
other
in?
one back in. Thank you.
We'll just wait for Councilor Adams. I know he doesn't smoke, so it shouldn't be long.
Oh, he's coming. He just couldn't hear me at the other end of the hall.
Is he chit-chatting? Do I have to tell him don't make the mayor come out there? Welcome back, Councilor Adams.
Thank you.
So, Councillor, we are on, our next agenda item is the request for an exemption for the principal residency requirement for short-term rental business license. And we have two requests today. One is from 912A Stanley Street, and the other is from 111 Nelson Avenue. Mr. Toom will speak to these as well, I'm sure, but I'm going to get the recommendation on the floor. So that let's get the first one on to should I they'll have to both be done separately, won't they? Yeah. So we will first go with that the proof of principal residence requirement for a short-term rental business license as required in business license bylaw number 3347/2016 be waived for the property legally defined as Lot A, Block 44, Plan EPP 8724, District Lot 95, Kootenay Land, District 912A, Stanley Street, for the 2018 calendar year. Do I have a mover?
So moved.
Thank you, Councillor Sherbo. Seconder, Councillor Adams. And let's turn it over to Mr. Toom for this particular property to give us some detail.
For sure. So first to start, because they are presented in the same report, we have had two requests. Council has received two requests in writing for these exemptions. I'll do my best to speak to them separately. In terms of 912A Stanley Street, the reason for the recommendation is that in this case, and same goes for the other for request number 2 as well, that the short-term rental does not replace or remove any long-term rental housing. Otherwise, this property is a part-time residence for the applicants here in Nelson. They indicate that they spend 4 to 7 months per year in Nelson, and otherwise the property is unused. So there's not an option for the property owners to rent out the home as a long-term rental, and they prior to the regulations they did operate a short-term rental out of the home, and there weren't any issues or complaints at that time, and And then once the regulations came in, they weren't able to do that. And at this time, now they're requesting an exemption. So there's not a threat, so to say, to long-term housing stock, and staff didn't see it in the public's best interest to necessarily have this home being unused between the property owner's use of the home.
Thank you.
And one note then that applies to both of the requests is speaking to why staff only recommend a 1-year exemption specifically is due to the upcoming review in June of short-term rental regulations, and it's difficult for staff to recommend permanent exemptions. We can't exactly do that, particularly because there's the possibility that that council can review the regulations in a way that could make to consider amendments that could provide a longer term sort of normalized avenue for both of these applicants to apply for a license, instead of having a stack of exemptions that pile up and that become difficult to administer. So hence the 1-year recommendation.
All right, council, any questions? Councillor Warmington?
Well, I would say that your answer has actually addressed one of my concerns. I feel, well, I very much sympathized and understood the concerns and the needs
Councillor, could you use your mic, please?
that came forward. I also realize that another one has come forward, and I'm wondering how many more out there in town, and does this undo all the work we did on our short-term rental policy? So, I guess then the question for me is it better to give a temporary license and then take it away if the policy is not revised in such a way as to allow this? Or is it better to just wait until we actually review the policy? So I'm thinking about that.
Is that a question
If you
specifically?
have an answer, then great.
I don't necessarily have an answer. When we reviewed both of these requests, as you say, in terms of their individual circumstances, they make sense. In this one in particular on Stanley Street, the home isn't being used for certain periods of time. It's not necessarily that the property owners come and spend 4 to 7 months consecutively in Nelson, but they come and go. So it's it's in that light that it made sense for staff to recommend the exemption as formulated for 1 year. However, it's also a valid point as well too that how many does council want to open the door to granting exemptions to the short-term rental bylaw and
Supplemental?
Yes.
I'm just wondering if in the research that you did initially on all of our short-term rentals, you came across this situation in other communities and how they might have dealt with that.
No, I have not. So there's not, primarily because there's not usually a sort of a formalized avenue to sort of track exemptions. If there are any exemption requests, they're brought to council, and that would take reviewing all of the minutes and whatnot to see if there were any there. What I would add, I suppose, is that the reason that sort of the spirit then of the primary residence requirement for short-term rentals is to protect long-term rental housing stock. To avoid cases of investment properties, people coming in from out of town, buying up multiple properties and putting them up as short-term rentals full-time. And it was sort of using that framework that we were looking at both of these exemptions and realized that that's not the case. So the spirit of this requirement is not threatened by these requests.
Thank you.
Councillor Daly.
Some of the rationale that you used, that it wouldn't take away long-term rentals or housing stock if we allowed this exemption. And I'd argue that, it can be rented long-term, month to month in the zoning that it's in without an exemption, which is needed housing as well for seasonal workers or something like that. So short-term, or like what's considered not short-term, it becomes a money thing in some ways, because it's just short-term. You're talking about Airbnb by the day, and we know you can make a lot more money if it's by the month. Not that this is based on that, but it's also about the kind of variety of housing, rental housing, that you want to provide in Nelson. And I think if you do agree to these exemptions and you've got houses that aren't owner occupied and using them for short-term Airbnb where they had the potential for being used for month-to-month basis for seasonal workers, you are losing some potential housing for our service workers or someone who would rent month-to-month like that.
Days, yeah.
And or for a period of time. Or if it doesn't work for these people, maybe they sell their house and it makes it for another family house in town, you know, that is occupied. And I think part of the problem we were trying to avoid was having non-occupied homes rented out as an Airbnb, period, and let the market let them fit in another market if they don't fit in that for those properties. As soon as you make an exemption here, I think you're opening a floodgate for more of this, even though the circumstances, the arguments are compelling and that.
If I could just respond to that quickly then, just in saying that I can't speak to the homeowner's exact schedule for when they're in Nelson. So the only thing I would point out is that I'm not aware whether, whether they come and go every week or two, or whether they're gone for 2-3 months at a time. In which case, what you described is possible. I can't speak myself whether maybe they are here for 2 weeks at a time sometimes, and then they're gone for a week and then they come back. In which case that wouldn't be feasible. But one additional thing that I should have reminded you as well too. Then. But in November, this was an applicant who came to the committee of the whole to present as well too, just as a brief reminder of that.
Mm-hmm.
All right, council, are you ready for the question? All in favor of this exemption? Opposed? Motion carries. I know that this is unusual, and usually I should speak before the motion is carried, but
Somebody get Jen's.
no. We have another one to deal with. In this particular case, the proponent did present to council, and as a long-term Nelson resident that does provide long-term rental on his property in a place that a space he created, he and his partner, and their intention is to move back full-time. And they do use the property here, so I'm in favor of this particular exemption. I understand the concerns raised by council as well, but if we are reviewing this on a case by case and only for a 1-year exemption at this time, while we look at our bylaw and how it's working or not working, I think that this is a pretty safe one to do. Second, that the proof of principal residence requirement for a short-term rental business license as required in Business License Bylaw 3347/2016 be waived for the property legally defined as Lots 7 and 8, Block 8, Plan NEP 284B, District Lot 96, Kootenay Land District 111, Nelson Avenue for the 2018 calendar year. Could I have a mover? All right, thank you, Councillor Sherbo, seconded by Councillor Adams. Okay, we'll go ahead with this particular residence.
So this case is a little bit different, as you've read. The property owner lives nearby, about a block away, and it's not. And she works on a daily basis in this home as well too, and I believe in the upper story in the attic as a writer. So she's on site on a daily basis, and the house sort of. The normal use of the dwelling unit portion, the residence portion of the house, speaks exactly to Councillor Daly's sort of idea of longer short-term rentals, so to say, sort of month to month. She regularly provides the house for visiting medical professionals, locums, artistic professionals who are in Nelson on a short-term basis and struggle to get long-term housing because they're not here for the long term. So that's sort of the niche that this house normally fills in the community, as I said, primarily for medical professionals. However, the applicant would like to apply for a short-term rental business license in order to fill in the gaps, as she's not able to have always back-to-back locums and 1-2 month stays. So she would like to be able to provide it as a short-term rental in between to help with the finances and maintain the ability to continue to provide this service.
Thank you. Questions, council?
There isn't anything in the bylaws around how many days would be short-term.
That's provincially regulated. So it's 1 month or over is considered long-term, so 30 days and under.
Right, well, I'm saying, given this request, this property could be rented out short-term 365 days a year.
Correct.
Okay, which might be something we want to look at when you're doing your review, if you're going to have partial use, partial time. Because again, I think as soon as you go to daily use, you're taking affordable rental off the market.
Councillor Warmington?
Yeah, I think I'll pass, actually.
Okay. Any other comments? Any questions? All in favor? Opposed? The motion carries. Thank you. All right. We're bringing back Councillor Morrison. That's great.
Sorry.
So at a recent Committee of the Whole meeting, we had a presentation by the West Kootenay Eco Society around supporting a 100% renewable energy by 2050 goal. The request was forwarded to staff for recommendation back to council, and we have a recommendation here today. So, council, are you wanting to do this recommendation, or do you have another proposal?
Sorry, just let me get my agenda open, please. I lost it.
Well, let's move with this one to begin with.
I'll move the motion.
And the motion is that
second it.
council continue their commitment to the 2014 to 18 strategic plan and path to 2040 sustainability strategy, and refer the option to support the 100% renewable Kootenays campaign to the 2019-2023 council's strategic planning process. So it's been moved by Councillor Sherbo and seconded by Councillor Morrison, and I'll open the floor for discussion. Councillor Warmington.
So I don't like the idea of sending it back to staff for further consideration. I think that we are in a time of dramatic climate change. Things are happening very quickly, and we have a very short period of time in which to respond in line with the commitments that our government has made at the Paris Accords and the Paris Accords. I know that Nelson is already doing a great deal, but I don't see that anything here is out of line with what we were already doing. And more than anything, I believe this to be a political statement that garners further support and puts more energy behind this push towards responding to climate change. I think we are in good company in taking on such a statement, because over 300 other municipalities or regions have signed on, including Vancouver. And Vancouver's experience with this has been really excellent. Not only has it pushed them along and allowed them to look at decision-making with a new lens, but it's also helped their economic development as companies are coming to Vancouver to be associated with the renewable brand, the 100% renewable brand. I'm concerned that if we keep sending this sort of thing back to staff, that it's just going to fall by the wayside. I think that it's really important that we act quickly, and I think there are some good reasons why we need to do this now and make a political statement that this is something that we aspire to. We have an excellent group of people here who have done amazing research, and they have a possibility of moving forward if they get enough support for this initiative to continue moving forward and doing some excellent research that they've done in the past. I also know that the provincial government is looking to put forward money for investment in renewables, and I think that we would be in good position if we had this resolution under our belt to take advantage of some of those opportunities. I'll say that for now.
Thanks, Councillor Warmington. Councillor Sherbo.
Well, while I do agree with trying to go to 100% renewable energy by 2050 seems like a lofty goal. And when a lot of people like to drive electric cars and figure they're doing a good thing, which they are, but there's quite a carbon footprint making an electric car. There's a carbon footprint making solar panels, which involves mining. There's a carbon footprint making windmills, to the construction of windmills. So all this stuff sounds good, but in reality, to try to reach these goals, even building, as we know, Site C Dam, which produces electricity, huge carbon footprint building that dam, and the destruction of the environment to do it. So it's really hard to see the feasibility. I mean, even everything we have plastic is made from oil. All the interior of cars are plastic. So it seems to me very difficult where we're going to get the renewable energy to replace all of this. Because all of the stuff that produces renewable energy has a huge carbon footprint. That's all I'll say for now.
I'll come back to you in a minute. I'll let other councillors who haven't spoken first, let them have the first round. Councillor Warmington, go ahead. Councillor Daly.
I'm just wondering if we haven't something new. We're discussing what's been put on the floor, and I'm wondering if do you have something new to put on the floor?
So
Is
we
that-
would have to vote on this motion, and
Yeah.
then you can vote on a second motion
Okay.
if it's.
Well, you'd have to
defeated.
defeat the motion.
Okay, then let me speak on this motion that's on the floor. As a good step to go to bring it back to the 2019-2022 Council Strategic Planning. When I look at the goal of the path to 2040, it says Nelson's an energy self-sufficient community where energy production meets or exceeds local consumption as a goal. It's already our goal to be self-sustaining and to add our voice to this campaign of being self-sufficient by 2050. I'm prepared to do that now, given what I'm reading in 2040 as a goal already. I think cities, I'd agree with Councillor Warmington that we need to act, we need to provide some leadership, and I'm prepared to do that.
Further discussion on this motion? Councillor Morrison?
No, I'm just concerned that I heard that it was gonna be referred back to, which was the other option, to send back to staff for more information. I think we already have
Information.
the information from staff, so I don't think we're sending it back to staff. I believe that the 2040 document is excellent. One of my concerns here, and the idea of being totally renewable by 2050 is a stretch goal. Stretch goals are important to have, and it's not that I don't support it. I'm also thinking in terms of getting any of this even started in the waning hours of this council. What I liked was the fact that it talked about this being, a key issue for the next council, because we have a number of things that we're already trying to achieve before we finish our terms, and I'm uncomfortable with putting another issue on the table with the expectation that staff is going to be able to start doing work. What I really think needs to be done is that the path to 2040 needs to be reviewed and renewed. And I think working with groups like the Eco Society going forward is the way to do that. And I just don't see that happening. This is January. This is, by September, well, when silly season starts in probably August, the window here is very, very short. So it's not that I don't support the concept, but I think this is the appropriate recommendation at this time in this council's current journey, and I would really hope that plan that we have, that 2040 plan, we've met some of those goals. So we need to sort of erase them out of the 2040 plan because we've already gotten there, and we need to add some more. So like many things, as Councillor Daly would probably comment on, we had a housing plan set, and we've had that reviewed, and we know that we've met some of the goals, and now we've got these other goals that we have to meet. And so I think these things have continuous flow, and I would expect that it's now time for us to be looking at seeing what we've accomplished in that one plan, and then setting the next plan going forward.
Thanks, Councillor. Councillor Warmington.
Well, I'd like to respond through the chair to Councillor Sherbout. Yes, things do have a carbon footprint, but I think that if we just say, oh, well, we can't do anything because things already have a carbon footprint, we're not getting anywhere. This is all about taking it a step beyond and actually pushing those boundaries and finding ways around it and finding ways to do different. If we don't start that now, we'll be out of time. I don't think that anything that's being asked of us here is in contradiction with anything that we're already doing. But I think that it takes an extra step in that it binds us regionally, because this is a regional initiative. In fact, it's larger than regional. In fact, it's global in the larger picture. And I just don't see that there's any reason why we shouldn't or don't commit. I don't think that it means that we have to shift our priorities or take on any work in the short term. I think that analysis can happen in future, but I think it's really important that we make this statement now. And take advantage of the coming opportunities, I believe, to capitalize on exactly this goal. So, just that.
Thanks, Councillor. Councillor Daly.
Yeah, just through the chair and responding to Councillor Morrison, I like the analogy with the housing. I think as a goal for the housing committee, our goal in the city around housing ought to be recognizing that housing is a right, that all people need to be housed. And I think that that is a similar lofty goal that can be used around energy self-sufficiency. And I don't think it's too far off where we already are with 2040. And I don't see it as a new expense or anything. It's about setting that goal and adding our voice to that.
Councillor Sherbo.
I don't disagree with anything Councillor Warmington said, and I even heard it written that climate change is happening 1,500 times faster than it was ever predicted. Like in our lifetime, we could see the Columbia Glacier disappear.
Oh, we will.
So it's not that I disagree with the objective. It's just that I would like to see how it can possibly be done. Even electric batteries are made by mining. You need mine materials to make electric batteries, and then most of them aren't recyclable. So we just seem to be digging ourselves into a hole.
Thanks, Councillor Adams.
Yes, I think that council should continue their commitment to the strategic plan, because 2014 to 2018 was obviously step one. Step two then starts in 2019 and goes, and we just got to keep going forward. We can't stop or turn around and go backwards.
All right. Go ahead, Councillor Warmington.
Well, I would just like to respond to Councillor Adams in that I don't believe we're stopping anything. In fact,
we can't stop, but want to
no,
continue.
we're not.
No,
Yeah,
good.
and I think
Well,
this
we
is
haven't
a
voted
way
yet.
of continuing. Now, I think there was some other possibilities of wording the language a little differently to make you more comfortable. That we're not abandoning what we're already doing, that this is supportive of what we're already doing, but it empowers our community group and our, to work in the region. I know that having support for this initiative is important to the funding for their continued work on this really important issue, and I would hate to see that opportunity lost because we're afraid to put our name on something that I think is inevitable. If we don't look through the lens of 100% renewable, then we'll never envision how we get there. As long as we keep saying, oh, it's impossible, we'll never make it happen. I think that having an aspirational goal drives us towards success. And so
Okay, we're
support
going
that.
to wrap this up pretty
We're
soon.
getting philosophical, but I remember, the president of the Selkirk saying that, 30-40% of the students in school now, they don't even know what job they're going to be having. It could be in renewable resources and stuff. So when we take a leadership role and say, yes, we want to have renewable energy, complete sustainability by 2050, maybe it it fires up the dream of how that can happen with young people and apply themselves in a long-term way and say, let's get on it. I see that's what's being asked for, and I'm willing to commit. So,
Yeah, I don't disagree with Council Warmington again, and things are going faster. I would like to see this go to the next council, where they can look at a process, how this can be attainable. Because I'm not saying stop it, we're already doing as much as we've picked, as one of our former councilors said, we've picked the low hanging fruit, and we gotta try and look at a process where we can go ahead, but I would like to see how that process can be, and I think the next council would have an opportunity working it through the next leg or next level of the strategic plan.
Council, I'm going to cap discussion here. I think we're kind of going around the mulberry bush and the same, is this a new point? Is this a new point?
It's a new point.
Absolutely new point. All right.
Absolutely new. So then if, I guess what I'm requesting is that we have some show of support for the amazing work that's being done here in order for them to continue accessing the funding necessary to
Well, we're going to vote yes.
continue.
Thank you, Counselor. All right, no more new points? No more. So the motion that is on the floor, just to remind council, is the one that staff has recommended that this be referred to the 2019 to 2023 council's strategic planning process. If you would like to see that, you vote in favor. If you would like to see something else, then you vote it down. So first, okay, all in favor of this motion? 1, 2, 3.
And Mayor Kozak, you didn't put your hand up, so that
Oh,
puts you
no.
in favor.
No, I'm not. I haven't called for the opposing vote.
Okay.
So I am going to vote against the motion. So that puts it in a position of a tie. And the reason and so the motion is defeated. And what I would like to entertain is another motion on the floor for what council would like to see moving forward.
There was a resolution, a different wording that was suggested by.
Yeah, I have that here if you want me to read it out.
Please.
please.
So the recommended resolution was that City of Nelson Council commit to the development of strategies and implementation of projects to achieve the long-term goal of deriving 100% of its net energy from renewable resources by 2050.
Read the first part again.
Please. Yeah, okay. Do you have the new one? Sorry, can I ask her to read the new one?
One moment. There is a new motion that has been crafted. Would council like to hear it?
Yes.
All right. If you could please bring it here, and I'll read it out.
Nobody has it.
No,
It's
they
on my
do.
personal
No, I mean, they
email.
don't have paper.
Well, it's okay. Email me or message me right away or whatever. Bring me your phone.
Give up your phone.
Access my personal email for some reason.
Didn't Francis read off the new motion?
I don't have
No,
it.
that's the old
I
one.
don't have it.
That's the
I
old
have
one.
the one that came in November.
There's a new motion,
No, it's the
Councillor
one that
Adams.
came at the last meeting, Bob.
Oh, the one that
Thank
came
you.
from
Yeah,
last
please
We're
do.
just waiting.
Yeah. Thanks
Young
very
lady
much.
has the next
Great.
one.
It is this paragraph right here.
This one here?
That one, please.
All right, so Francis, here we go. The City of Nelson continues their commitment to the 2014 to 18 strategic plan and Path to 2040 sustainability strategy, and Council commits to achieving the long-term goal of deriving 100% of its net energy from renewable sources by 2050, including it as part of their 2019 to 2023 strategic planning process. Francis, I'm going to pass you this.
I think I got most of that. Nice job. Yeah, because part of it's connected to the other one.
That's why she gets paid.
The one thing I would just, the wording would need to be a little bit different with respect to, we can't say that we're including it as part of your 2019 to 2023 strategic plan. It's not yours to have. So it would have to be as written in here that it is advanced to the next council strategic planning session.
Does that, and that sits well with council?
Voted down.
It still
Right.
suggests that we're committed to
Yeah.
to this goal.
Yeah, because we can't set the next
Right.
council's mandate
That's
for
right.
them. That's what that means.
Yes.
So thank you for that. So do I have a mover for that recommendation? Counselor Warmington, seconded by Counselor Daly. Debate.
Can we hear it read?
I would suggest, yeah, because I have it roughly, because I know how to reconstruct it after.
You
but-
can bring it back to me.
Oh, no, that's okay.
No, we're gonna let the
If
city
you
man.
could, sorry, we gave the phone back too quick here.
Oh, no, but
Thanks. So this is the wording. The city of Nelson continues their commitment to the 2014 to 18 strategic plan and path to 2040 sustainability strategy, and council commits to achieving the long-term goal of deriving 100% of its net energy from renewable resources by 2050.
Period.
And
That's it.
Yeah. Is that, well, the last part of it was, that it
No,
be forward.
I would,
The next
I think I want the next part in there. I mean, like,
Okay.
as much as I look like a bad guy not wanting to,
It's
it's not like I'm
next
I
part
mean,
of it-
I think we kind of want to embed the concept that we hope that the next elected group considers this a priority.
yes.
I mean,
like that too.
I think that's
Yeah.
where I want to go, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, all I'm just saying is that my point was I don't think we can do anything with it now.
Yeah.
And I would have been all in favor of like,
Perfect.
my other problem here is that you were hinting at like they need funding or something. I mean, we write lots of letters to support funding initiatives. I'm a bit confused by the whole thing, but I want the rest of it in there if I'm going to
All right, so the way, because this
Can't.
particular can't set the next council's mandate, what we would do, the last part of this would be, and that council refer the option,
To support the 100% renewable Kootenays campaign to the 2019-2023 council's strategic planning process.
No, you're back to the same thing.
no, but yeah, but we're just at the end, we're referring that back to, that we would,
refer it on
We're
to the next.
supporting
frog it
it.
forward.
And we're hoping the next council.
It's basically the same as the
So-
previous one.
Well, no, it's not. So is there, so we had a mover and a seconder, right? And so you're good with that now, the mover and the seconder? All right, now let's debate it. Are there any further comments on this motion or any questions or?
Well, I guess my only comment is I don't think it's that much different from the previous motion that was voted down.
I think there's more clarity.
Anyway, that's neither here nor there, though. Question?
The previous motion that was voted down did not commit council to the 100% renewable Kootenays campaign now. It was
The previous
referred
motion
it to
said
the
to
20
refer it to the next council, and that's
Correct.
basically what that says.
Well, no. This motion does commit this council to the goal of deriving 100% of its net energy from renewable. It's saying that we're committing this council to it, and we're hoping the next council will put it into their strategic planning process. Any other debate here? Councilor Morrison, you're looking unsure.
No, I'm just waiting to see if something else is gonna
Pop up.
come up. Do you need money? I mean, I guess that's the,
Everybody needs money, yeah. All right, if I'm hearing no further debate, are you ready for the question? All in favor? Opposed? The motion carries. Thank you, council.
Thank you, everybody. That was really important to me.
All right, our next agenda item is another recommendation from the Committee of the Whole for the Landlord Society. Thanks for attending this evening, and we'll look forward to working together. Council heard a presentation from John DeVries and Trevor Jenkinson of the West Kootenay Landlord Society at the last Committee of the Whole. And during the presentation, we were asked to consider supporting a letter directed to the provincial government about changes to the Residential Tenancy Act, and to consider changes also to Nelson Hydro policies and procedures with respect to hydro accounts. So this discussion was referred to staff, and there was a recommendation made that council passes the following resolution. 1, that the West Kootenai Landlord Society request for support in sending a letter to the province of British Columbia regarding changes to the Landlord Tenancy Act be forwarded to AKBLG for consideration. Do I have a mover? Thank you, Councillor Adams. Seconder, please. Councillor Sherbo. Discussion. Yes, Councillor Daly.
We've already gone to the AKBLG, and that's where they've got the information about eliminating this policy. And that's why this government is acting on eliminating term rentals. And that came from an AKBL, well, it didn't come from AKBLG, it came from the UBCM. And so I don't see any reason to start that process again or think we can shove it off there.
Councillor, to be clear, I don't believe that this is about short-term rentals.
No, it's about term rentals.
Term rentals.
Yes.
And the term rental, the reason that the NDP government is put this in place and is proposing this legislation, change of legislation, is from a recommendation from UBCM. In reading the discussion on this topic at the House, the Minister of Housing is saying it's a recommendation and she's acting on it from UBCM. So to go that route again doesn't make any sense. And she recognizes in her discussions that there are landlords that make use of this term rental to test tenants to see if they're going to be good tenants. And there are other methods for doing that within the Rental Tenancy Act that it's not unfair to the landlords at all, and that's why they want to, it's actually unfair to the tenants.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Councillor Morrison?
I just, sorry, my apologies, of course, for being away when this presentation was done, because we had an extensive discussion of moving forward with the concept of this letter writing. Mr. Jenkins is on the Housing Committee and had asked to be put on the agenda of our last housing meeting, and we had a very lengthy discussion around the Housing Committee actually supporting him coming to council and also asking for this letter of support. And I also have read the Hansard in regards to the discussion that happened on the floor around this Bill 16 and the changes to the Tenancy Act. And I believe there's still opportunity here for the city to make a submission, whether or not, I don't know that it should go through the AKBLG. In fact, it probably should go probably directly to Minister Robinson's office, because they are looking at exceptions to Bill 16. I would have to disagree with my fellow councillor, Mr. Daly, in regards to that there's other processes to test the suitability of a tenant. Repeatedly within the Hansard, Minister Robinson referred to the fact that you have the right to evict a tenant based on the Landlord Tenancy Act, and that $7 million has been put forward by the provincial government to try to clear up the backlog within the tenancy branch. And I would have to say that I lend some support to the fact that these short-term, not short-term rentals, but these term residencies that some people use to see whether a tenant is suitable, I think needs to be supported, because the process, $7 million going in to fix it or not, is very cumbersome. And I think that for those that aren't so savvy, is a very difficult process to enter, and I think also deters people then, if they do end up with a bad tenant, from ever wanting to rent again. So I think that, yes, Minister Robinson referred several times in the Hansard to the fact that there is a process to evict a tenant that isn't suitable. I think the issue is the long played out effect of all of that, and the ongoing things of potential damage, and just that concept of having to go through that, which is is a really lengthy and difficult process. We live in a tight market. We have many seniors that rent, and I sort of have this sort of image. If my little granny wants to rent, I want her to have some opportunity to make sure that the person that she's renting to is appropriate. So although a lot of the letter that Mr. Jenkinson came to Housing Committee with, and was also the one that he has submitted to the last meeting, I personally feel that some of it was a little bit perhaps heavy-handed and strongly worded, but I think there's some good points that could be extracted out of there, and I think that we could look at supporting, because they are trying to determine a section of exemptions around the ability to use this short-term rental clause. It's very unfortunate that in probably major urban centers, those tenancies have been used to be able to jack up rentals to exorbitant amounts on renters who are probably good renters. I mean, it's bad landlords too, but I would like to think that we could perhaps look at a letter that could come from our planning staff, who have lots of expertise in this area, and can wade their way through Bill 16, which is pretty heady stuff. But I would like to support the potential for us making a submission for the potential exemptions to Bill 16, Bill 16 is passed. So right now, all there is the ability to make a submission for the potential for future exemption lists that will be an adjustment to this bill that's already gone through. Sorry for taking so long.
So, one moment, Councillor, so, in terms of speaking to the motion, you, am I to understand that you're not necessarily looking for this, any of this information to be forwarded to AKBLG, but that you would like a letter sent to the minister's office? Is that what you stated?
I think that's
more appropriate than AKBLG?
Yes.
So we'll just hold that thought, and we'll go back to Councillor Daly.
It just seems to me that a fixed term must vacate type of lease makes a home, not a home, but a place to stay until whoever owns that home decides they want to have me there or not. And a home ought not to have an end date like that. I have faith in the provincial process of the Landlord-Tenant Act, that if you need to remove someone, that you would go through that process and keep it in their hands rather than in the hands of the landlord. So I won't be supporting this city endorsing this letter.
Just as another point of information, what I also heard Councillor Morrison say is that it was not necessarily that that all of the points in the letter would be forwarded, that the letter, would that be one of the points that you would be considering?
Yeah, I think that the city has the capacity to write a letter to look at what potential exemptions would be appropriate to the bill around the fixed term of the rental, as opposed to sending Mr. Jenkinson's letter in totality.
Thank you.
And that was the discussion, and I also need to say that was the discussion at the Housing Committee, and that was the point that they also wanted to have brought forward, because there's members of the Housing Committee, of course, that are of the same view as Councillor Daly, and that's important to have that discussion. So there was people on either side of that discussion. Everybody thought that there was probably some potentially good exemptions, because I think what happens is that this was let's face it, this was a kind of a knee-jerk reaction to a very bad situation in mainly urban areas. And so you get this sort of, everybody gets tarred with the same brush, and now it's like, now you've got a bill, and now, maybe we should have built in some exemptions.
So, Councillor,
And in the Hansard, if you do read the Hansard, they talk about them trying to develop a list of exemptions. So I think they want to hear that. I think we should give them some that suit rural British Columbia.
So, Councillor, would it make sense for this to go, I hate to do this to you, but to go back to the Housing Committee, send this original letter back and have so that the housing committee can have a further discussion and recommend, in conjunction with our planning staff or development services staff, something that's more appropriate that would be forwarded on to the minister.
I have no problem with that. I'm sure my housing committee would love to chew on that.
So,
For how long?
I'd support, I'll support, make that recommendation
so
to
we,
refer it back.
so,
Got a
so a
motion on the
motion to
floor.
refer to the housing committee?
So okay, so we can just do a referral if we want, rather, okay.
All right, and so that's, you made that motion and seconded by
Well,
Councilor.
is this motion on the floor?
But we can refer
We can refer
the
this back.
matter, yeah.
Okay, well, we need to scratch, almost need to do an amendment to take AKBLG out of it.
They can come up with
Yeah,
whatever
we'll
they
come up
want.
with who we want to send it to.
And it makes sense to send it to the minister.
Whatever.
Yeah. I think we just
Yeah, it
refer
does.
the motion back and also with the appropriate guidance from Councillor Morrison as chair to, around the council's discussion this evening, and that that an appropriate letter be drafted so, for approval. All right, all in favor? Opposed, motion carries. And secondly, that staff be directed to review policies and procedures for hydro landlord tenancy customers.
Right. Oh, that-
So do I have a mover for that?
This is, I'm
Are we
moving.
moving this, because we're gonna move it so we can discuss it, or we're not gonna move it and not discuss it?
I'm not gonna,
You're not gonna move it?
no.
Nope, you're moving it? Who's seconding?
I'll second it for discussion.
Thank you, Councilor Morrison. All right, so this is to review, we would like, this is directing staff to review our policies and procedures for landlord tenancy customers. And this is in direct response to the fact that in some cases, there are delinquent hydro bills from a tenant that a landlord may have, and that those costs are passed on to the owner of the property. So there was a concern raised about that policy. So,
So just to clarify that policy itself is set by statute, so
by
any,
BCUC.
in the community charter, any service that is provided to a land, if it's not paid for, we can charge it as if they are taxes. So that is in the community charter. So that's a right that we wouldn't give up. But how we get to that is what they actually, is what we can look at. Will we always collect a deposit from tenancy rentals? Will we always, right now, in the bylaw, it says that after 2 years, that deposit is returned to whoever pays the deposit. Do we want to continue that? He asked for that practice to not continue.
Go ahead, Councillor
Just a
Daly.
question for staff. So
Yep.
I've rented a property, the tenant is taking out hydro account, they would set up their own account.
Correct. Yep.
And in their name, and you're saying if they're delinquent, then the homeowner could be taxed to
Property
recoup
owner.
that, the
Yes.
property owner.
Yes. As a
And-
municipality, it's a right that we have, that any service we provide to the land, that we can then charge it as taxes against the property.
One of the challenges as well for the landlord is that because we do bi-monthly billing, many times the bill has not been delinquent until they've already vacated, and then the landlord has given back the damage deposit on the house.
Okay.
Okay. Review it.
All right, so all in favor of staff, yeah,
No, that's it.
all in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. And it may be that it's just fine the way it is. But maybe we need to communicate better to landlords and property
be
owners
some-
what their rights are as well.
There may be privacy things around this.
There are
Possibly.
some. There are some.
All right. I'm sorry, I've lost my way here. I'll be with you in a sec. Fees and charges, commuter parking bylaw. Oh, boy, we just have a light agenda this evening, don't we?
Yeah.
So, we're starting the new year off with a bang. We have been talking about the issue of parking. It's a perennial issue in the community. It's not new to this council or to past councils. And there was a draft downtown parking strategy presented to the committee of the whole on May 15th. And part of that was to, in that proposal, is to pilot some metered commuter parking zones, because as we know, there are people who come to town to work, and it's difficult for them to find parking space. So this speaks to that, and there is a resolution around this for first and second reading, but I'm going to let Mr. Toombs speak to this as well. So go ahead.
All right. And as the mayor just said as well, this is not the issue of making parking available for commuters isn't one that it's been reoccurring throughout councils within the city of Nelson, but it's also, of course, an issue that other cities have dealt with as well. And hence, the idea of charging for commuter parking isn't exactly a new one. It is a tried and true method for ensuring that parking is available for those who actually do need to drive to work and to find some place to park their vehicle. But first, to speak quickly to what is being asked of council today in terms of the bylaw amendment. Right now, it's Public Works is in charge of parking meters. Public Works is able to establish meters that have 15-minute, 30-minute, 1 hour, 2 hour, 4 hour time restrictions. That is flexible. However, the only in terms of what is charged by those meters, that is of course set by council and bylaw. And right now, the only rate that can be charged to drivers as per bylaw is for $1.25 per hour. This becomes quite expensive, of course, if you're going to be parking downtown on a daily basis and you're parking for 8 hours per day, 9 to 5. You're looking at $10 a day. The current rate for the parkade, the daily rate is $5 a day. So that's where this is coming from. So essentially, what's being asked then is to establish a new meter rate that staff can implement on meters that are on locations, parking locations that are suitable for commuter parking specifically, in order to not charge commuters $1.25 an hour, so $10 a day, and instead only $5 per day. So the underlying, I don't want to get too much unless there's specific questions around it in terms of the background on where this is coming from, but part of it is the acknowledgement that parking and maintaining infrastructure, parking is like other kinds of infrastructure. It is not free of cost, and that maintaining this kind of infrastructure in terms of bylaw enforcement, in terms of snow clearing, pavement maintenance, etc., does come from general revenue when there isn't a fee for service. Right now, there's quite a bit of free parking around the perimeter of downtown, and leading up to the downtown parking strategy and the work that we're going to be doing this year, we wanted to gain some experience with testing commuter parking pilot projects in zones. So this is one opportunity to do this specifically. Our first planned implementation is for Cedar Street.
This is a question for staff. Is it going to be metered or is it going to be the newfangled machine?
The newfangled machines. That could come at a later date on future sites. Right now on the 300 block of Cedar Street, meter posts have already been installed by Public Works. So in this case, it'll be parking meters in this specific location.
Just when I think about the whole picture of commuter parking, there's commuter parking lots outside of Nelson, on the highway, where people carpool and that sort of thing. And I think if we're rolling this out and anywhere we're promoting this and we can put a sign, we ought to encourage commuters to double up and ride share and be aware of, there's a limited number of parking spots, and start that campaign with this. If you're putting up a sign, to put up that kind of encouragement as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, you could even go so far as to say the commuter parking is for people who come in not by themselves. If you wanted to go to that extreme.
How would you ever?
Yeah, it's almost like the
Cameras.
yeah, the what do they call it?
HOV lanes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm saying you want to encourage that to be happening, or you park out in the lot outside of town and pick up someone and bring them in from there. So we reduce the number of cars coming in.
All right. Councillor Morrison?
I'd like to move the motion. I think this was a great idea.
All right, so this is that the Corporation of the City of Nelson Fees and Charges Amendment, commuter parking meter rate bylaw number 3390/2018 be introduced and read a first and second time by title only, and that's moved by Councillor Morrison, seconded by Councillor Warmington. And you have a further discussion, Councillor.
Now, are we talking about, like, say, along the airport where people park there right now for free?
For free.
Or are we just looking at Cedar Street initially?
The initially just at Cedar Street. That's the first planned implementation. However, as part of the downtown parking strategy is drafted right now, the strip along the parking is also along the airport is also considered to be used heavily by commuters as well too. So that's a possible future site of implementation as well too. But as stated in the RFD, we're treating this as a pilot project, and this is on Cedar Street is where we'd like to start.
So will staff come back I don't want to see this migrate into streets where people would be parking, their guests might be parking for free right now, but we could see it as a way to put commuters. I don't want to put people that are having guests or whatever in their homes having to necessarily pay that. Mm-hmm. So I'm wondering would it be coming back in chunks? Is that how you're going to do it?
Not necessarily in chunks, if anything, actually as a whole, when we come back to council with a strategy, exactly.
Okay.
But to be clear, what's being asked today then is an amendment to the fees and charges bylaw, correct? In order to make this a possible rate that can be implemented at meters. Right now, the only possible rate is $1.25 an hour. So we staff do intend on being cautious, and residential parking and the guests of downtown area residents as well too is of course being looked at separately through the permit system in particular. But yeah, this is more intended not for residential streets, but for on-street parking within walking distance of downtown, where commuters currently already are parking.
All right, cool.
Yes, Councillor Warmington.
I'm just wondering, do you know how many residences in that area would be affected? Do they have parking or alternatives?
Parking on the other side of the street there
Pardon?
There's parking on the other side of the street there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
This should have no effect on residents there.
Ready for the question? All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. And secondly, that the Corporation of the City of Nelson Fees and Charges Amendment Commuter Parking Meter Rate Bylaw number 3390/2018 be read a third time by title only. Thank you, Councillor Morrison, second by Councillor Warmington. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Toom. Next, Utility Rates Bylaw. And this is for water and sewer rates. So council went through workshops and staff presentations on our water and sewer master plans, as well as what is happening for the operating and capital plan for the next year. And there is a recommendation, and there's a very solid report here with council and for community on what that work plan will be. And there is a recommendation around water and sewer rates. So I'm sorry, folks, I'm just scrolling. It's proposed that there be a 2% increase in water rates and a 1.5% increase in sewer rates. As well, we would be continuing with 75% rate discount for conforming suites that are rented long-term. Just for the information of the public, Phase 2 of the utility upgrades for Hall Street received the necessary grant funding to proceed and should be completed in 2018, and that is not part of the taxation. That is due to grants and also to reserve funds. Ongoing infrastructure work to create the ability to use lake as an emergency water source will continue. I know Mr. Innes is researching all of these water sources and secondary water sources. That's part of what's going on as well. We are also continuing with the strategic residential and commercial metering for data collection purposes. And with all of that and more, I'm going to ask that council, that the Corporation of the City of Nelson Fees and Charges Amendment 2018 Water and Sewer Rates, thank you, Councillor Morrison, be finally adopted. And second by Councillor Daly. All in favor?
Just hold it.
Oh, yeah, we're on final adoption now, Councillor.
No, I know, but I just want to make it clear, like when they were talking about residential metering, you were just talking about block metering.
Yeah. Thank you,
just wanted to
thank you,
make
thank
that
you for
clear.
that, yeah. Zone metering, it's called zone metering,
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Block didn't we?
yeah. All right, all in favor? Opposed, motion carries. I think we already did that, but I'm sorry I did it again. So now we come to the, we had a public hearing earlier this evening on recreational cannabis, the bylaw that has been proposed there. We're on our third reading for this bylaw. And the first motion is that the zoning amendment recreational marijuana operation bylaw 3389 2017 be read a third time by title only. Moved by Councillor Daly, seconder. Councillor Warmington, and
Can we, I assume staff will change that to cannabis rather than marijuana.
Yeah, I was just gonna ask that after we pass the readings, if council could do a resolution directing staff to change that wording, so we have it in the minutes, that you authorize us to change it from marijuana to cannabis, that would be great.
good. All right, so we've been moved and seconded on third reading, and all in favor? Opposed, motion carries. Secondly, that the zoning amendment recreational marijuana operation bylaw 3389 2017 be finally adopted. All in favor?
We need a first and second.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you, Councillor Warmington, seconded by Councillor Daly. All in favor? Opposed, the motion carries.
So I'll move a motion that staff
Be directed.
redirect it to change the word marijuana to cannabis.
Moved by Councillor Sherbo, seconded Councillor Warmington. All in favor? Opposed, motion carries. All right. The Water Master Plan. So this is a Water Master Plan update, and we adopted the original Water Master Plan in 2007, and we've been using it as a roadmap to do good work ever since. We reviewed it in 2017 and updated it with recommendations, and it's recommended that council adopt the updated master plan for 2017. Because Mr. Innes has been here the entire meeting and been so I would like him to just step up to the mic here, and for the benefit of people at home who might be watching, and to give us a few highlights. There is, again, if you go to the Council City of Nelson website and look at council agendas, there's an excellent staff report here. Good evening, Mr. Innes. Thanks for being here, and perhaps you'd like to give us a few highlights of what we updated.
Sure. Thank you, Your Worship. The intent in updating the the Water Master Plan to the 2017 plan is from what with the city adopting the plan in 2007, as you said, it really gave a roadmap that has allowed the utility to move forward with a very good planning, and also because we have known what is coming, we're able to adequately set budgets, etc. So with where the master plan and the update is going, one of the things, of course, is for us to continue with our renewals of the buried underground infrastructure, of which we've seen good returns on in the amount of leak reduction that's been experienced here in the city. One of the key factors in the report too, though, is taking a look at centralizing our treatment approach, and by that I mean by taking water that comes from our various supplementary sources, and that all being redirected to the Mountain Station site to serve as our primary treatment site. In this master plan, we're also looking at finding new secondary sources. Of course, there was some discussion here earlier tonight regarding climate change, and of course, water scarcity appears to be something, at least with warmer summers, etc., that we could experience here in the future. A secondary source of water and new sources of water are something which is very important to us, and so that's something that is included in the plan as well. Really, the plan, I think, will help the administration in being able to move forward with, and give us the direction. From what we've seen from the past plan, it was something that really allowed everybody to know where things were going and to be successful with that. It really does help in keeping your utility with a focus. I have read the plan and have worked with the consultant in establishing the plan, and I think that it sets some really good direction for our next 10 years forward.
Thanks, Mr. Innes. That's great. Any questions? Councillor Daly.
It's a very comprehensive plan. And, it talks about it being strategic. And I get that the next step is technical planning, where we begin to look at the financial costs of things. And when I'm not talking the short, medium term, I'm talking the long-term secondary source, whether it's going to be Clearwater, Apex, Groman, or Kootenay Lake, and the kind of price tags, 5, 16 million, 22 million. So I'm just wondering, at what point do we do a little bit of the technical look at those options, so that, if Groman at 16 million is a lot more than the Clearwater, but we can have power generation, our employees can figure out that higher pressure pipe and get training on that sort of stuff. If it has a longer term life, those kind of things, so that council can make a decision on which way to go early on, sort of thing.
Sure, that's a fantastic question, Councillor Daly. What the plan is laid out is a bunch of, like you said, different options are available for different new sources of water. I guess the way that we presented them had various price points in which that would increase. By adopting the Water Master Plan, what my staff will be doing is we'll be engaging with the province in seeking water licenses, as well as us taking a look at the real technical aspects of how do you actually get the water there and what's involved with all of that. Obviously, we want to try to do things at the best possible price point that we can. Really, by adopting the Water Master Plan, that'll get us going on the process. We really hope that we're able to do things at the lowest possible price point, but we may find that there are other technical limitations that prevent something from coming to fruition.
So you begin some technical planning from this strategic planning document.
Exactly.
Okay, because I don't want to go, we go cheaper, 5 million on Clearwater, and it's only going to take us to 2035, when Groman, we could have spent more and been there. So those questions become clearer, or the direction we need to go becomes clearer. Is that?
We're giving staff permission we're approving the overall plan, and then they can do the technical work needed to make it happen.
Okay, and just curious, is that 2-year or 5-year, or when's the master water plan? This is.
Well, Councillor Daly, I've had a very cursory discussion with the water licensing branch. My assumption would be for us to really get into a full, to have a license, could be potentially up to 2 years before we can resolve that. And in that time, I think what we also need to be looking at in tandem with that is what are the technical difficulties in achieving any one of those sources. So I think the best thing we can do is to begin the process and to start looking at both the technical as well as our ability to get approvals, and to work through that in tandem. Of course, as we develop and move forward with things, we'd certainly be bringing them back to council, even just for council's information as an update. And they're likely, if we are going to be looking at something where we would move off of one to another source and there'd be a large cost implication, that would be something we'd obviously want to come back to council and discuss.
I'm thinking it's been 10 years since we did the Master Water Plan 20, and given the way things are changing, how quickly I don't want to wait 10 years before we start looking at the technical things. Mm-hmm. And
I don't think that we are. I think that this gives the green light to move ahead.
Yeah, our intention, Councillor Daly, would be that if we get the green light with the adoption of the plan, is that we'd start working right away with this. And this is something we don't want to take 10 years. We want to have it resolved a lot quicker than that.
Okay.
I thought.
Go ahead, Councillor.
Yeah, no, I thought it was a great updated plan, and as Councillor Daly's asking about the technical things, I recall in there's lots of, we have to go to water licensing, but one of the most attractive things in that plan in terms of a secondary source for water actually requires us to engage with Ministry of Environment over some frog or
Trout.
Bull trout.
bull trout, you know, so there's many things that have to be investigated, and we have to know whether or not that would ever be approved. And I see this plan as yet we've said, okay, here's the direction. There you go, staff. You got that big heady document that, I don't know, it was like 70 pages, I think I read. And, you know, go around with us and come back and tell us what you're finding out there. So, yeah, I think it's a great plan. I think that, I just like to recognize that I feel that your reporting and breaking down that plan when we were having our session around this, looking at the budget for 2018, was clear and concise. So I appreciate also your work in terms of making some of these documents that are kind of unintelligible something that we can work with and really sort of see what the long range might look like for us. So.
Thank you.
Excellent. All right, there's a recommendation that council approves the 2017 Water Master Plan as a technical guidance document to support future planning, design, and budgeting activities.
Move.
Thanks, Councillor Morrison, second by Councillor Sherbo. Further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? It's a done deal. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you for being here this evening.
Safe travels.
Yeah, I hope the roads are good.
I saw them at 8:30 working this morning, checking out roads.
Get the water.
Council policies.
This one was a bit confusing for me.
So, we, as a corporation, the City of Nelson reviews policies on various things, and it looks like the Human Resources Department has been reviewing policies for staff. And there are a couple of ones that are old, and that we need to be repealed, and that's what's coming forward.
There are new ones to replace.
More or less, yes, they were reviewed, they were rewritten. There's also a second component of it. You'll see that their recommendations on these is purely that these policies are repealed.
Repealed, yeah.
These policies, on the recommendation of the audit that was done by the AGLG's office, recommends that employee policies are approved by the city manager, not by council. So these will be repealed as council policies. The now city manager approved policies were included for your information. And you can see that there was quite a bit of vetting process that happened through the city's safety committee and Josh committees for each department. So for staff policies, that's the process that's going to be followed from now on. And as the staff policies developed and approved through the city manager and that committee or that staff committee, I guess they are, that the council policies associated will be repealed.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Councillor
So
Morrison.
I just have one question, like, because sometimes things come up and you want to look at comparators or for whatever reason. As these change over from being council policies to sort of internal staff policies, which I firmly believe is the correct direction, will there be a spot where a councillor could go to look and see what the staff policies are?
Yeah, we certainly can make them available, like anytime that council would request, you could certainly see them. We have an internal location where policies are stored right now that council doesn't have access to, but we can certainly develop something for that.
Just a question. I mean,
Because, yes.
these are policies that we used to be able to see. I don't think that this is something that we should be really involved with, but questions do arise. Sometimes I'm going to look to compare what the policy is at the city versus a policy we have at the hospital versus it's a knowledge thing. And so I think that that the council of the day might want to be able to access certain policies. So as long as they were
Yeah, they would
accessible.
certainly be available
Yeah.
for
Thank
sure.
you.
Yeah.
All right, so all together or one at a time?
One at a time, please.
That policy employees, alcohol, drugs, and medications 2580.00.005, July 1st, 2000 be repealed. Moved by Counselor Morrison and seconded by Counselor Sherbo. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. That policy employees incident exposure and near miss reporting 252000.010 February 1st, 2002 be repealed. Mover, Counselor Warmington, seconded by Counselor Daly. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Third, that policy employees occupational health and safety 2520.00.005 March 13th, 2006 be repealed. Counselor Morrison, seconded by Counselor Daly. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, moving along here. Sorry, I'm just, we have some reports here. We have a report from the Finance Department and a report from the Building Department. Building statistics says, are there any comments? Could I have someone move receipt? Thank you, Counselor Sherbo, second by Counselor Warmington. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. We have minutes of, I'm just bringing it up here, sorry. Well, isn't that odd? There we are. We have minutes from the Advisory Planning Commission. We have the Cultural Development Committee and the Library Board. Can I have someone move receipt of these minutes? Thank you, Counselor Daly, seconded. Counselor Warmington, all in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. And our action item listing. Does anyone have anything that they would like to discuss from the action item listing? If not, could someone move receipt? Counselor Adams, seconder. Counselor Sherbo, all in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Do we have any late items? I think we have motion released to the public. And these are resolutions that are as of today released to the public. One, that council approves the reappointment of Paul Craig and Ed Oldoff for a 2-year term ending on December 31st, 2019 to the council's Advisory Planning Commission. That council approves the reappointment of Nelson Becker for a 1-year term ending on December 31st, 2018 to the Advisory Planning Commission. That council approves the appointment of Brenton Raby and Margaret Keating to the city's Board of Variance to serve a 3-year term from January 1st, 2018 to December 31st, 2020. The council approved appointment of Stephanie Myers, each for 1-year term ending on December 31st, 2018 to council's Cultural Development Committee. The council approves the reappointment of Slava Doval for a 2-year term ending on December 31st, 2019 to the Cultural Development Committee. The council approves the reappointment of Lynn Goodison, Charmaine Gray, Edward Oltoff, Robert Stacy, Jim Reimer, and Shauna Hayes, each for a 2-year term ending on December 31st, 2019 to the Nelson Housing Committee. And last, that council approves release of the 2017 Nelson and District Community Complex funding of $184,200 in accordance with the requirements of the Regional District of Central Kootenay, Nelson and District Recreational Programs and Services Bylaw number 1623. Those were all done this evening. Could I have a resolution to adjourn?
No.
Thank you, Councillor Warmington, and,
Council reports.
oh,
Really?
well, you don't have anything to report.
Really?
You were, well, let's see. You were away, I think, what's the report? Everybody had a good Christmas? Okay, we're done. No, okay, sorry. All right, let's have council reports.
Okay, I gotta go back to my.
Start with,
Oh, good lord.
Okay, go ahead, Michael.
I have no report.
Okay,
Yeah.
Councillor Sherbo.
I went to Canmore, it was minus 29.
Thank you.
Great Christmas.
Councillor Morrison.
Well, actually, I do have something to say.
All right.
And I'll say more about it later, but I too was away on vacation, and as many of you know, one of my favorite pastimes, you'd think I would vacate, but I love to read the newspaper. So I was firmly entrenched in reading copies of the Desert Sun when I was in Palm Desert, and it just brings to mind the issue of around the discussion around cannabis as of January 1st, the state of California. It's kind of like the Wild West there, legalized recreational cannabis, and it's really interesting considering that California is like the 6th largest economy in the world, and to see what's going to go on in the pursuit of this, and some of the things that we may see here on a purely sort of financial basis. And like I say, I brought home a stack of newspapers, the articles got wilder and wilder as it got closer to January 1st, and I had to actually stop reading them. I was just, this issue of the fact that they have legalized marijuana, medical cannabis in California, and they have had for about 10 years. And this, the recreational stuff is going to be taxed, and like they can apply in California, you can apply a tax almost anybody that you are. So the state will apply a tax, the county can apply a tax, cities have the ability to apply a tax, and they're talking about perhaps a 70% premium on recreational marijuana. And at the same time, they're saying, okay, but what we'll do is we'll give some tax exemptions to medical marijuana. So you can see where this all kind of goes to, is the fact that this could be driving more people to go out and find their back room, whoever can approve a medical marijuana license in the state of California. The other thing is that they're really considering that this is still going to drive marijuana underground, which in my mind, the idea here of legalizing cannabis was to try to take the criminal element out of it. They're talking in California that they're estimating that the cannabis business is worth about $13.5 billion a year. But what they're saying is that there's going to be about $5 billion in this new economy, and it's like, okay, so there's still going to be a lot of stuff on the dark side, or however you want to refer to it. But it's going to be interesting to see how it all unfolds there, and they've had a year to. Well, they've probably had more than a year to plan for this, but some large cities like the city of LA actually has not legalized it yet. Like, it's just an astounding mishmash. And I guess at the end of the day, my only hope is that I hope that our government federally has taken the appropriate amount of time to get this process right. I know that I speak often against cannabis, but when it becomes legal, I do hope that it's done correctly, and that if this government feels that they need to have more time, that they take more time, because I think once Pandora is out of the box, we're not getting it back. The other thing was just out of just the last paper that I picked up as I was leaving town on Saturday. In Palm Springs and in Palm Desert, there are signs that says neighborhoods are for neighbors. Limit short-term rentals, short-term vacation rentals. And it was interesting, as I have to recuse myself because, of course, I own a bed and breakfast, but it's interesting that they've actually got this on for their next civic elections. They've got it, it's going to go to public vote as to what direction short-term rentals are going to go in Palm Springs for sure, and I'm sure it'll be on the things to vote on in the Palm Desert area again quite soon. And you didn't have to drive too far to see those signs in neighborhoods. So always the interesting things about what you see when you go on vacation. Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Once again, we're kind of out ahead of the curve there, see? There you go. Councillor Adams.
I would just like to welcome everybody back who's been away on holidays for 3 and 4 weeks and got to sit in the 70-degree weather.
80, sorry, it was 80 where I was.
All we had here was snow, and more snow. But anyway, it was Christmas, New Year's was great. I'm glad I stayed here.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor. Councillor Warmington.
Well, today I went to an all recreation workshop at RDCK on fees and charges, which was, I think, a really interesting and useful follow-up to a previous one just before Christmas. Really looking at the community benefits of the various services that are offered or potentially offered by any municipality or region, and really providing a logical, justifiable framework for making funding decisions. So that was very interesting. Unfortunately, a lot of directors were not able to attend because of the snow. But, and I'm really looking forward to resuming our budget meetings next week.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. They are next Tuesday and Thursday, right?
Tuesday, Thursday.
9 o'clock.
They're open to the public. I don't have much to report. As I said at the beginning of the meeting, welcome back, everybody. It's going to be a great year. It's going to be a short year. Get ready. We got a lot of work to do. Happy New Year, thanks.
Happy New Year.
Good night, everyone. And motion to adjourn. Oh, Counselor Warmington, seconder. Counselor Daly, all in favor? Opposed? Okay, we're done. I don't know how many motions.
Budget, next week, 9